Welcome to a special solo episode of the What podcast. This is kind of an off script evening podcast, kind of channeling my midnight DJ voice for you all today. And I wanted to tune in for a special announcement. We're actually going to be announcing a name change for our podcast. But before I get there, I wanted to share some thoughts that I've been having about coaching and a coaching conversation that were really inspired by some podcasts that I tuned into this week. Beginning with a podcast that was featuring Elizabeth Gilbert as a guest. She is an author, for some of you who may or may not know her. And she talked about a Celtic poem of approach that highlights no cherished outcomes. And I thought this was fascinating because it immediately had me thinking about coaching as a conversation that has no cherished outcomes. And what does that mean? I think for me, it means that a coach is never subject to disappointment. And that concept of no disappointment is at the foundation of a coaching conversation. And that in and of itself, approaching with no cherished outcomes, is what coaches establish their so-called objectivity on. I believe that coaches reach for objectivity, but we're human and we're subjective in every way. So reaching for objectivity means practicing self-management. And that is one of the greatest skills of a coach. In fact, we teach that in our courses where, the difference between a good and a great coach is self-management and self-regulation. Because a real coaching conversation rests on the fact that the coach does not need anything from you. A coach can't be hurt, has no fear of being misunderstood, has no resentment in the conversation, and again, no cherished outcome, meaning my ego isn't looking for satisfaction from this conversation. And in order to reach that, I have to agree that I am not in dialogue with my coachee. I am creating a space for a coachee to be able to think clearly and deeply for themselves about what it is they want. First and foremost, to clarify what they want for themselves. And then also to be resourceful, whole, and capable to work out what is in the way of getting what they want. And then, of course, options towards what they want, commitments they will make, and so forth. So we have to regulate as coaches our reflex to save, fix, and tell. And that means that I'm committed to curiosity. I'm committing to really putting my own needs and experiences aside in favor of hearing yours. I'm leaning into a conversation that is about you for you. It isn't about me. A coach is a witness. A coach is a mirror. And that mirroring and that witnessing is extremely important to how a coachee will increase their self-awareness and be able to make new choices, and new possibilities will emerge from that because of new perspective. The fact is that, if I were to ask you all one question, and that question was, what do you wish someone would be for you? Think about that. What do you wish someone would be for you in a conversation? Many of us, if not all of us, would want to feel seen and heard first and foremost. We want to feel like we have time to voice what is important to us. And that means that there's space created for me to complete a sentence. I'm going to talk about me, what I want right now. I want to be seen. I want to feel heard. I want to have space to complete a thought. I want to feel like this person has my back in the conversation, but also in this partnership that we're creating, this partnership of equals, as we call it in coaching. I also want to feel like I'm not in competition with another person. And I think a lot of our conversations in the world, whether it's with family, friends, peers, leadership, a lot of those conversations are in competition because our egos are heavily present in those conversations. And our egos always want dialogue. They want to be heard. And so that one-way conversation that is meant to be a coaching conversation doesn't happen very often because of the need for dialogue. You talk, I talk, you talk, I talk, and sometimes it's over each other, right? We talk over each other. We interrupt. We guess what the other person's going to say. We assume we know what they're going to say. We also make huge assumptions about language and what the language means to the person. We cut people off all the time. And so one of the objectives of a coach, as I said earlier, is to witness and mirror, which means that I'm in the act of witnessing and mirroring. I am self-managing what the ego wants, which is to be heard. So it's also what we're reaching for is that in psychology, it's called unconditional positive regard, meaning that no matter what emerges from the coachee, I agree to sit in acceptance. I don't agree with the coachee necessarily. I'm not suggesting that we compromise our own values and our own wants and our own desires for our coachees, but I am agreeing to put my want aside and to create a space of acceptance. And that acceptance is the difference. That acceptance says, I'm here for you unconditionally. And I will agree to stay in the position of curiosity and learner as opposed to competitor or to judger or to a position of ego. Because a coach doesn't need anything from you. When they're truly coaching from the perspective of a partnership of equals, from the perspective of the coachee is whole, capable, and resourceful, a coach does not need anything from their coachee. And I like to think of this as an echo of love. And I don't mean romantic love. I mean an experience in which someone feels truly loved for who they are and what they are, and not what they should be, need to be, have to be, and feel like they must perform every day. So it's thoughtful, it's selfless, and it's attentive. And that attention leads to attunement. And that attunement is where the love sits. I feel loved, an echo of love from my coach, because they are witnessing and noticing me in a way that most people don't. They notice when my shoulders go up, or I lean into a conversation, or my eyes drift to the side. They notice when I take a deep breath suddenly, or if a quiver enters my voice. They notice all of the shifts of energy and facial expressions. And they're doing that because they've agreed to witness who you are as you are. Instead of what we often do in conversations, which is to adopt listening positions. And these listening positions really impact how we hear people. So by definition, listening is to receive without judgment. If we're truly in a listening position that is open and fluent, we are agreeing to just receive information without attaching meaning to it. But we often, because of how we're built, we're complex human beings. we often sit in listening positions, and those positions are critical, which means that I am evaluating you as you speak. I filter your message based on my dominant belief system and what I want from the conversation. I'm often positioning myself from past experiences and assumptions, like predetermined information that I already hold and possess, and I am applying to you and what you're saying. So I'm constantly assessing, and I'm also trying to align myself with what you're saying or what my dominant belief system already says to me. So it's a critical listening position because my brain is prioritizing judgment over connection. Then there's the defensive listener, which is the person who perceives the conversation as a threat or a challenge. We tend to hit that flight, fight, or freeze state. We have stress responses. We emotionally shut down, get defensive, and withdraw. And then there's the fixer or the fix-it listening position, which is shifting into problem-solving mode. It's the person who has trouble with silence, who feels like we need to fill every space to save other people from their discomfort with silence or potential discomfort. We jump into stories, we jump into solutioning and problem solving. Advice is often there, that dreaded advice monster. And we are missing a lot of information often in this because we're so focused on fixing that we miss the full context, whether it's the emotional context or the story or problem context. So that leads to overriding the empathy response. And we instead become dismissive and righteous in our position because we feel right. We feel like we don't need more information. I know my ego is definitely front and center when I am in fix-it listening mode. And then there's resentful or judgmental listener, which is kind of a sum of the four types of listening positions, where my past is coloring my present, where my emotionally based memories are affecting how I perceive a situation, and it really closes me into a bit of a tunnel in which I am not seeing the full picture because of my filter, right? So all of this is to say that we are often, if we're not mindful and we don't practice strategy to overcome these listening positions, to reach for an open mind, to reach for presence, to reach for self-regulation and self-management, and cultivate that higher emotional and social presence, that is often where we default. So with intentionality comes this beautiful space of being there for others in what I want to call a healing conversation. Healing conversations are that one-way conversation that I was talking about, that it's not a dialogue, it's an opportunity for someone to have a stage presence with you and to be the center of attention. So back to my original thought of we are changing the name of the podcast in light of, kind of in honor of, I want to say, of what I just talked about, which is that we want our conversations on the What podcast to be really focused on what, not why. And so we're just adding not why to our name. We're going from the What podcast to the What, not why, because we want to emphasize the shift away from reasoning and explanation and what we call logic to powerful discovery through deeper thinking, exploration, and awareness that's created from these healing conversations. So we really want to help our audience step into the coaching conversation with us to reimagine what conversations can be capable of and what people are capable of when they have healing conversations. So, What Not Why is about those healing conversations that bring a new perspective, a new possibility, an opportunity for people to be truly seen and heard and felt. And in all that, we get to discover our geniuses together. So stay tuned for new episodes with exciting guests and our new format and our new title, new name for our podcast. I have the privilege of having these incredibly powerful conversations with the most amazing people in our community that I no longer have the pleasure of meeting in our classes because I'm not facilitating all the classes like I once was at the very beginning of Coach Academy. And so I get to meet people one-to-one and to discover what drives their passion for coaching and what they hope to, impact in the world, what they hope will be the difference they make in this world. And so tune in to those conversations. They're weekly. We publish every Wednesday. I have an amazing team behind that publishing and an amazing right hand who's scheduling all the guests, and Lauren has been so fantastic, and I just want to give her a shout out for how she organizes and supports the making of this podcast, even though it's really grassroots, rudimentary at best. It is an opportunity nonetheless for us to connect with our clients, and for me especially to connect with the coaches in our community. So I am excited and privileged, as I said, to sit in this position. And I want to leave you with one question this week. Before I do, though, I do want to tell you that hitting subscribe on this station is going to give you a notification whenever new conversations come out. And those notifications are not just about hearing another podcast. In my mind, it's about getting to know someone from that healing conversation perspective. And I hope that the ripple effect of this podcast is that every listener gets to have one healing conversation because they were inspired by these conversations that we're having here on the What Not Why podcast. And so I want to ask you this question, which is the one that I will be leaving all of our guests with going forward. And that question is, if you had the opportunity to have one question answered from the universe, just one, what would it be? So I'll leave you with that thought. Feel free to write your answers in the comments. I think that would be wonderful. And I really look forward to your continued listening as a guest. And also, hopefully, if you're in our community, which many of you are, you will be a guest on this podcast one day.